watching Business World Live. I'm Danie Laurel. It's the start of a new trading day. Let's kick off with our top story. Global banking group Citi is painting a rosy picture for the Philippine economy, saying it is expected to bounce back with a 4.9% growth this year. This estimate is on the upper end of the government's target range of 4 to 5% expansion for 2021 and is a turnaround from the record 9.6% contraction recorded in 2020. Citi sees technology to spur growth this year, saying that at the moment there's a lot of ongoing tech disruption. It says a number of sectors, including healthcare and consumer industries, have benefited from tech. Another emerging industry that will probably experience a boom is digital infrastructure, including towers, data centers, and fiber networks. That's according to Citi. Meanwhile, the country's electronics industry has raised its growth forecast for the sector to 10%. That's from 7% on the back of stronger global demand. 26 business groups are asking the government to allow the private sector to use their vaccine stockpile as booster shots for their employees. The Philippine Star reports that the Makati Business Club and 25 groups are hoping to prevent wasting the jabs and a resurgence of infections. The group said there's no more shortage of shots and their large stockpile could actually expire and go to waste. Recall that the government mandated the private sector to send a portion of their vaccine purchases to the government, whose own orders were waiting. But as the government's vaccine supply steadily increased, business groups believe their jabs are better off used as booster shots for their workers. The groups pointed out that without boosters, the country risks another surge, which could again shut down the economy. Okay, guys, middle of the week, and let's take a quick peek at how we are opening today. Still in the red, actually down by 0.2%. This happening despite the fact that we did rise yesterday, according to Phil Stocks, on the back of bargain hunting, plus the reopening of the economy, of course, and net foreign buying of 776 million pesos, lifting that market. Another thing that they're saying is that there was a lot of optimism on the lower house when they approved on second reading the validity extension of the 4.5 trillion 2021 national budget until next year. Phil Stocks is saying that when you extend the budget, that will be favorable to the economy. It will be boosting the country's spending. Now, another issue is according to First Metro Investments, Tina Ulang, is she says that there are a lot of reopening plays being bought. You've got local and foreign funds as well buying into property, aviation, consumer stocks, and even conglomerates. And this, according to Regina Cap's Luis Limlingan, a lot of eyes were on the fact that Fed Chair Jerome Powell will be extending, according to U.S. President Joe Biden, another 4-year term. Now, COL Financial is saying that hopefully Thanksgiving just around the corner, plus a lot of those sales happening, that would be keeping the buoyant mood open here, at least in the Philippines. And let's take a look at our big players here. San Miguel up by 1.8%, together with GD Cap and Alliance Global. So basically the big conglomerates leading here. But you do have the property space, SM Prime and BDO. Those are two SM companies down by 1.2% and more than 1% respectively. I wanted to take a quick peek at Keepers Holdings. This has been in the limelight due to that follow-on offer. It's actually up by 0.6% to 1 peso and 65 centavos. There's been a lot of reports, or at least local media reports, saying that they plan to take over Spain's Bodegas Williams and Humbert, which is the manufacturer of Alfonso brandy. That's the biggest brand in their portfolio. They have not necessarily confirmed that, but they did reiterate that they will be using that 4.5 billion peso follow-on share sale proceeds for a strategic investment of the brand, but they will be informing the public after, or at least once the proceeds have been used. And finally, just a quick peek on the telco space. This, as we are still getting those spam texts, which are of course called the smishing or SMS phishing. And this, according to Smart, they've blocked around 400 to 500 mobile numbers from just a month for the past month. Globe says it has deactivated 5,670 spam numbers and blocked 71 million spam messages this year. The NPC has now said or urged telco operators as well as e-commerce platforms like Lazada and Shopee and some banks to report on these spam prevention measures. In October, they had this idea that it could be linked to the contact tracing data, which might have been leaked. But on Tuesday, the commission has said that this is run by a global crime syndicate and not by a group that has gained unauthorized access to those contact tracing forms. Renewable energy has been all the rage, but is it finally going to dominate our local unsustainable power industry? Here to tell us all about his plans, we have Leandro, Leviste, founder and CEO of Solar Philippines. Hi, Leandro, and welcome to Businessworld Live.
Hi, Danie. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Leandro, before we talk about that sizzling IPO in the works, let's take a step back and just discuss the renewable energy here in the Philippines. You've been in this industry for quite a while. Simplify things for our viewers here. No doubt, renewable energy is needed. It's the future, but there seem to be a lot of bottlenecks to getting there. Where are we now in the Philippines? Have we actually progressed? Are we moving backwards due to the pandemic? Where are we when it comes to our targets?
Solar is now the lowest cost source of energy, and with batteries, will soon become the lowest source of energy at all hours of the day. And the problem is no longer the demand, but the supply, because there's not enough land and transmission to build the capacity of solar and other renewable sources that the DOE and the country's utilities are requiring be built within this decade. So that's where the private sector has to come in to create more supply.
Okay, it's been said, and we will be together in that SEPC conference as well tomorrow. We cannot purely rely on renewable energy just yet. This, according to RC of Meralco, unfortunately, to have sustainable energy or equity and energy security here in the country, we still need to have base load of coal. Do you agree with that? And if so, how can we call our power sustainable? What percentage of renewables do we actually need to say, okay, the Philippines is going in the right direction?
Renewables currently supply just over 20% of the country's electricity, with non-renewable energy comprising the other 80%. And we fully agree that we should have a transition, but not an overnight deactivation of that other 80%, with renewables mostly coming in to supply the growth in demand of the country's economy. And the DOE has already captured this in the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which mandates utilities buying 35% of their electricity from renewables by 2030, which even at that 35% level is going to be quite a challenge for renewable energy while not needing to displace the existing fossil fuel power plants.
Okay, so we have 9 years to get from 20% to 35%. Basically, you mentioned, Leandro, earlier about battery storage and solar energy now being the cheapest source. Can you explain that a little bit? Have we gotten to that point where we can say with conviction that solar energy is the cheapest form out there? So there's no excuse to be using other forms of energy.
Yeah, so the fact that solar without batteries is the cheapest is already undisputed, insofar as our company in our Tarlac solar farm has begun supplying Meralco at a rate of 2 pesos 99.99 centavos per kilowatt hour in 2019. And with other solar projects now coming in at a similarly low price, it's already the cheapest source during the day. The battery price has also come down from $1,000 per megawatt hour in 2010 to $200,000 per megawatt hour today. And because most of these projects are going to be coming online in the next few years, one can extrapolate that by the time they come online, the battery prices will become even lower, where what is today comparably priced versus fossil fuel plants at, let's say, 5 pesos per kilowatt hour to 6 pesos per kilowatt hour will become cheaper than fossil fuel plants in the near term.
Okay, tell us about Solar PH and your journey to date. Projects you've managed to do since inception, and how many megawatts of power have you been able to run already, and how much are in the works?
Thank you. Our company has always seen the challenge for renewable energy adoption being the acceptance of the consumers for renewables. And this was from the time when we began installing solar rooftops on shopping malls, needing to convince people that this was a good proposition, to the time when we were trying to convince the country's utilities to buy more renewables. But we would emphasize that the last few years has been a great change in the perception of renewable energy. And we are now seeing that it's the country's utilities that are actually one of the most proactive in encouraging renewables development. So our company has been fortunate to have opportunities to supply utilities like Meralco at the aforementioned 2.9999 peso per kilowatt hour tariff in our 100 megawatt in Tarlac. We also have a 63 megawatt in Batangas, and all combined have over 200 megawatts of operating capacity. But this Nueva Ecija solar farm that we are currently raising funds for would take our company to a larger scale with 500 megawatts of planned solar capacity.
Okay, so you have 200 megawatts existing plus the 500 that you're hoping to come online. That's correct? Or will we
That's
500 in total? Okay.
we have a variety of other solar farms in development, but this 500 is our largest project to date.
Okay, let's talk about that. Why invest in this project specifically or in this IPO? There are, of course, other renewable energy projects at play, other listed renewable energy companies as well, some of which are already operational, some are invested in other countries, not just the Philippines. Why should investors be considering your IPO, and how long will it take for them to really feel, the dividends coming into play?
Solar Philippines Nueva Ecija Corporation aims to develop the largest solar project in Southeast Asia with such economies of scale, making it the lowest cost producer of renewable energy at the time when the country needs ever more of it, and hopes to continue to keep scaling the solar developments. So I think it's that competitiveness from the scale which differentiates this project. And the reason that we chose this project over our other entities to list is because of the exciting growth potential of not just doing solar 5 to 100 megawatts at a time, but 500 megawatts, which is almost half of the total capacity of solar in the Philippines today, all in one project.
How long are you looking to complete this 500 megawatts? What's the timeline here?
So the proceeds will finance the entire cost of the first 50 megawatts
Okay.
and land for expansion actually beyond 500 megawatts, with the company then seeking to raise debt and other lower cost financing to complete the 500 megawatts within a target of 2 or so years from the IPO.
Okay, got it. So the 2.7 billion, you've mentioned it in your press release, 1.3 of which will be used to finance the first 50 megawatts, and then follow on financing to be able to expand this. Question: why an IPO? Why not other sources of financing? You could tap into bonds. You could also do a REIT. Why an IPO, especially during these volatile times?
We have had the privilege of working with strategic partners in our other operating solar projects in Batangas with Korea Electric Power Corporation, in Tarlac with the Razon Group. And we thought that the IPO was fitting for this development project because it does come with greater execution risks than an operating project. But
Mm-hmm.
it would also have the upside of having a large growth from where it is today to where it could be if we can execute on the 500 megawatt plan.
Okay, and you've determined your listing price today, which will be 1 peso per share. How exactly was this determined? Are you, I mean, you say that it's 2 years down the line, at minimum. What's the PE here? Are you able to explain this to investors to understand what they're getting for their 1 peso per share?
Yes, well, first, we are very grateful for the warm reception that this offering has received from the local market. And I think it speaks to the general unmet demand for opportunities to invest in renewable energy in the Philippines. The investment decision would need to be premised on our company being able to execute on the growth plan of this business. And yes, compared to a smaller capacity that is already operating, it's a different proposition to have pre-operating with an ambition to have a larger capacity. And we are thankful that investors seem to be willing to be betting that we are able to deliver that capacity.
Leandro, finally, before we let you go, a lot of issues have been raised on solar farms. Specifically, we could use that land for agriculture. There's a lot of issues on food security. There's also a lot of issues on indigenous populations being displaced whenever we build huge scale energy projects. What are you guys facing, and how are you mitigating these?
That's the opportunity for solar developers to find the few locations where you're not displacing any productive agriculture or local communities. So the reason we chose this area is it has some of the largest ranches in Luzon in close proximity to Manila. And we are able to pack all of this capacity here because of the abundance of unproductive land. And that's really the competitive advantage of a solar company that can find good sites, and hopefully the proposition that we can show investors once we take this ranch into a solar farm.
Okay, so hopefully a truly sustainable project there with no negative impact to the environment. Thank you so much. That was, of course, Leandro Leviste, founder and CEO of Solar Philippines. The IPO period offer is December 1 to 7th, listing tentatively on December 17th of this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Checking in on the biggest headlines, the Senate is targeting to approve the 2022 budget bill on the third and final reading early next week. That's amid delays caused by a COVID-19 scare. Congress is under pressure to pass the budget bill by year end to avoid a reenacted budget, which could delay government projects. However, debates could extend until Thursday because of the allocations of major industry agencies. The budget of the DSWD, DPWH, GTI, as well as the Climate Change Commission, CHED, PSC, and PCOO are still up for debate. The initial target to halt deliberations was on Thursday of last week. Work got suspended after chamber visitor, DND Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, tested positive for COVID-19, but it turns out he was only a false positive. Now, a Chinese joint venture has qualified for a 141 billion peso contract for the design and construction of a 380-kilometer railway in the Bicol region. The Transport Department says the joint venture of China Railway Group, China Railway Number 3 Engineering, and China Railway Engineering Consulting was the sole qualifier out of the three bidders. The contract covers the first package of the PNR South Long Haul Project, or the PNR Bicol, which will run from Calamba, Laguna to Daraga Town in Albay. The PNR Bicol is expected to cut travel time between Manila and Legazpi City from as long as 18 hours to just 6 hours with regular and express trains. And that's a first look into the business day. Today is Wednesday, November 24, 2021. Catch Businessworld Live for the market close. It's at 3:15 p.m. today. I'm Danie Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.